and I would really appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful southern coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your weekly political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hey, Coos County. Hey, Oregon. Hey, America and beyond. Welcome to the south coast of Oregon. If you're watching from out of the state, and if you're in the state, I want to thank you all for joining me because we've got a great show going to be happening tonight. I've got a lot of information that I got to get out to you, and I'm going to bring on my guest because he's dealing with what's going on as far as the meeting that's happening tonight. We're going to talk about that, the town hall, the budget town hall. And right now I want to bring on former commissioner candidate, Chris Castleman. Chris, how you doing, man?
Hey, Rob, how's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. That's much better. That's much better. We were having a little technical difficulty beforehand. So, hey, how is post-election life? Does it feel different?
It does a little bit. I don't have as much pressure, but man, they're drawing out this budget process and trying to defund law enforcement. And I was hoping for a nice little break here, and turns out I'm just as active politically as I've ever been, having to go to all these meetings and have, emails and do research and try and twist these people's arms so that they don't walk into a train wreck and defund law enforcement. It's been kind of crazy actually the past couple of weeks.
You'll find out as long as you stay an activist, it never ends. I mean, you will have overlapping issues happening to you on a nonstop basis. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Do you hear that, an echo?
I don't, but I can mic my thing while you're talking.
All right. And so where was I going with this? Okay. So as an activist, you are going to be someone who's going to be nonstop doing something from one thing to another. Matt Wilbanks is going to be leaving. And in the time that you were here, you noticed that until just recently when he stopped doing everything, he was nonstop from one place to another. Diane and I and Marty Kurt, we're all doing the same thing. And many, many others who are what I consider activists who are involved with the political situation. No matter what you do, if you plan on being an activist in government, you might as well plan on this constant battle. So I hope you're up for it. You seem to be up for it.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it's nothing that I planned for sure. I mean, my main fight started 6-7 months ago around here because I just couldn't stand the fact that we were releasing criminals on repeat all day long because there wasn't jail space. You listen to the scanner and it's all day long. People getting their homes burglarized, cars stolen, businesses vandalized, and they're just letting these people go. It's gotten a little better the past month or two now that they've gone from 50 beds to 100, but they're talking about going back to 50. We've got a jail with a physical capacity of 250 beds, and they're only using 1/5 of it at the height of crime in Coos County ever. It doesn't make sense to me. So
people are going to say, Chris, you were opposed to the tax levy. You voted against the tax levy. You were opposed to it. They'll say that you wanted to defund the police by being opposed to the tax levy. Aren't you being hypocritical now? That's what you're being accused of by people out there who have a beef with you on this.
Yeah, that's fine. And it's I see where they're going with it. It's just not true. I was against a property tax increase. That's what I was against. I'm generally against any tax increase, but this one in particular, the only tax revenue that the county gets directly is from property tax, and that's only property owners, and that's not all the voters in Coos County. I mean, you've got people who rent, so I guess they indirectly contribute to property tax, but you've also got tourists and transients, and I think everybody needs to pay their fair share. Besides that, the county has the money. They have plenty of money to solve the crime crisis. They're just not using it appropriately. They claimed that they needed $5.7 million for that levy. That's what it was for. That's the projected amount it was supposed to bring in. But we
Yearly.
just found out
That would have been annually for 5 years, right?
right, 5.7 million, and it would go up a little bit each year to just over 6 million in the fifth year. But they said that the only things that money would be spent on was one more pod in the jail, so going from 100 beds to 150, and 2 more prosecuting attorneys, assistant DAs. That's it. They said repeatedly that that's all that they were spending the money on. Well, we just had a budget meeting 2 weeks ago, and it turns out the real cost of the jail pod and these 2 DAs is 1.4 million total. 1.4 million, but they were asking for 5.7. So it's bullshit. It's complete bullshit, and everybody knew it, and they want to try and blame that on me. I mean, there's people in government, there's people outside of government. They want to try and blame me because I said that it was bullshit. And then here we are after the election finding out that indeed it was bullshit. And then on top of that, sorry if I'm ranting here, but on top of that, they just found a couple funds where they can pull money. They had slush funds like the forestry fund, where they have this extra revenue from the timber sales going, and it's just sitting there, and they can use this money to fund all sorts of things. But one of them that they can use it for is to get that third pod in the jail, and they're just not. They've got $10
How
million.
much money is in the timber fund right now? Do you know?
Right now, it's a little over 10 million. They have this equation where they try and balance out the timber revenue over 5 years. So, because it goes from 3 million some year to 6 million, like last year was a $6 million timber revenue. So they try and even it out over 5 years so that they can budget accordingly. Like it's easier for budgeting. So they
Right.
came up with some equation that you'd think would be as simple as, the total sum divided by 5, but for some reason the equation's off, and that fund just keeps gaining money each year. It keeps going up and up. It's not the equation's not giving the county the right amount of money out of that fund, so it's just accumulating money. And I think they do this on purpose. I think it's for a rainy day, and it's pouring right now in terms of a metaphor, but there's other sources that they can get money to. They can also defund other programs. They don't have to defund law enforcement. They could choose to defund the assessor's office. They could choose to defund something else. And I think they like targeting public safety because it pulls at people's heartstrings. It tugs at their emotions, and it gets them to pay up and pay more property tax and vote for dumb things like a $5.7 million property tax increase. But it's just bullshit. It's lies. They've been caught in a really wicked lie, and now they're facing a reckoning. I don't think they think anyone's going to stand up to them. I don't think they really accounted for there being anyone to stand up and say, hey, we don't want you to cut law enforcement.
Right.
So now that you and me and other people are doing that, they're kind of stuck. They're in quite a pickle.
And I would agree with you. I would prioritize law enforcement over every agency. But the thing is that for the county assessor, and he made this point at the meeting, they are required to have an assessor, and they are required to do certain things by the state. Some of those are unfunded mandates. Some of those are just law that Oregon has passed. And he said that in the public meeting while he was speaking, that you hadn't gone to the assessor's office to even find out what they do in the assessor's office. And I think that's a fair complaint if you are the assessor and you're hearing someone say that you want them to cut their budget. But I want to hear your response to that.
Well, first I'll take a step back. And the reason he came up to the podium was because I was up at the podium and I said, we just had the sheriff, the DA, all the high ups in the sheriff's office sit up there for like 20 minutes and they explained what would happen if you cut the budget as they're proposing. What would happen on the streets of Coos County in the neighborhoods? What would it look like? And they started talking about all the crimes that they wouldn't be arresting for anymore, like shoplifting and trespassing and disorderly conduct. So there was a real, tangible, immediate effect to Coos County residents and taxpayers. So I stood up and I said, where the hell is the assessor and the clerk standing up here explaining what would happen if you cut their budget? And
Right.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I have an opinion, but why aren't they up there defending what would happen if their budgets got cut in the same fashion that we're cutting law enforcement? And instead of getting up there and doing that and explaining what that would look like, he just got up there and complained about me never going to the assessor's office. Me, a private citizen, not showing up at his office to ask him questions. I don't need to. So anyways, I did go to his office. We talked for almost an hour. I also explained to him that I've been to the hallway outside his office, which if you've ever been there, has like 6 or 7 giant billboards with papers tacked everywhere, hundreds of pages of documents that explain what the assessor does, how it works, how our tax dollars are collected, how they're spent. I've read all those. I've read all the ones online, so I fully understood what the assessor's office does. But anyway, so I went and talked with them. And it turns out that essentially if you defunded the assessor's office, really nothing would happen except new construction would not get assessed. You wouldn't have, if somebody built a house next to you from the ground up, they might still be paying the old property tax based on it just being a piece of land. Now it's a whole building worth a lot more money. The county might lose out on some of that revenue. However, when I say defund the assessor's office, we can still leave the assessor, the elected assessor. They have a $1.7 million budget right now. They don't need that. So we don't even have to pay the assessor, by the way. I don't think it's mandated that we pay the assessor, but let's throw him some cash. Let's give him $100,000 and he can go around. I mean, how many new properties, new buildings are being put up in Coos County every day? 1? Less than 1? So say it was 5 new properties being built in Coos County every day, new buildings. He could go around and assess those in a day, all in a week. He could do that. One person could do that. They do all sorts of other things that are not quite necessary, and they might be wanted. The commissioners might want these things to happen, but they're not necessary, like locking someone up for committing a crime and prosecuting them for committing that crime. Those are necessary things. We don't need an assessor. And Bob Main and the assessor confirmed this. They tried to explain that essentially without an assessor, we would get no tax revenue. That's totally bullshit. We would not get additional tax revenue from new properties that are being developed. We would still get all the same tax revenue that we get every year from property taxes. They would just stay the same, or they'd go up. They have computer programs that automatically increase them by 3% every year. So that would all stay the same. We just wouldn't get an additional revenue. That additional
But
revenue.
let me get a couple of things straight here.
Yeah.
You wouldn't actually stop the county assessor from being able to get a salary, right? He still should be paid, or otherwise you're not going to get someone to do that position.
I mean, look, if it came down to it and the county literally only had enough money to choose between funding the jail and the prosecutors and the assessor, then no, you would. So this is a better way to explain. You give the money to law enforcement first, and then you have a second meeting the next day to determine where the rest of that money goes. And if there's no money left, then that's just how it is. But we live in a world and in a county where they have enough money. So yes, the assessor would get paid. He'd probably even have a small staff. But does he need $1.7 million? Hell no.
I have no idea. I really need to go talk with Steve Jensen, who is the current assessor. I do know that he's been asking for a new way to assess property through new technologies that are out there, being able to see onto people's property a little bit better. And there are pros and cons with having politicians have that ability. But, it's the thing is that if I have to pay taxes and someone comes in and they create a new development and the assessor doesn't have the means to go out and assess new properties and new developments, I'm going to get a little ticked off that my competitor might move in here, build a business exactly like my business, and they're not paying property taxes because, well, nobody's sending them a bill.
Sure. I'll explain that. I'll counter to it. But we're also, this is exactly what they want. They want us to be talking about the assessor's office and going back and forth on these little tiny things so that we're distracted when they defund law enforcement. But the assessor's office, no. So the way it works is they could reassess your property and tell you, hey, Rob, you're going to pay $20,000 in taxes next year. And what you would do, you would march your ass down there and file an appeal. And in prior situations with prior assessors, they had tons of appeals because they were pushing the boundaries of what they could actually try and assess someone's house for. The new assessor, well, he's not new, but the latest one, Steve, I think you said his name is, he changed all that and they don't have as many appeals. So he's assessing things fairly, right about where they need to be or under that. So here's a novel idea. You can come up with a spreadsheet, a simple like matrix where you go, okay, somebody just put up a new 2,500 square foot home next to me on a 2-acre parcel, and you'd find where that falls in the spreadsheet and say, hey, this is what we're going to assess their house at. It's far below what we could probably get out of it, but we're not going to trigger an appeal by assessing it at this level. And it also saves us from going out there and spending all this time and all this money pushing the boundary to try and pinch every penny and get every last dime out of this person. And they could automate that and they wouldn't need a $1.7 million budget. They would just, every new home that gets built or addition on a property, they'd look at it and go, boop, 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 boop. Okay, this is what we're going to do with your property tax bill. It's going to increase a little bit, but you're not going to freak out and you're not going to file an appeal and we can all move on with our day. But they're not looking into ways to do that. They're not trying to do that because they're not having these conversations that you and I are having.
So let's turn it now to, because there's several departments within the county's general fund, and the other one is the county treasurer. And the treasurer actually performs two duties. She's an elected official as the treasurer, and then she has another title as some type of administrator. And she gets paid a lot of money for the administrator position, and I think she only gets $30,000 for the treasurer position. Do you see cuts available in that department as well? Because that's the one who, well, pays the bills.
That overlap situation is definitely a little weird. I think it's called finance director is what her other position is.
That was it.
I don't know. I mean, so if I had been elected, I would have sat down each week with a different department and just asked them a million questions and figured out what they did and sort of audited. I would audit each of them. I can't really do that as a private citizen, so I don't want to speculate as to whether or not she's overpaid, but it does seem a little weird that she's double dipping. But if we're talking about double dipping, Bob Main is still getting his pension from when he was assessor, and he's getting his salary for being a commissioner. So there's a lot of that bullshit happening. But yeah, the treasurer's office, I don't know. She proposed actually slicing her salary by $100,000.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. And that was her proposal if the levy didn't pass. So that was the other thing with all this. Back in March and April, I sat through day after day after day of these budget meetings where they came up with all these proposed budget cuts if the levy didn't pass. And each department, like the clerk's office, maintenance, IT, treasurer, all these departments came up with cuts. And they didn't like it, but they were able to come up with these budget reductions. All of a sudden, now the levy doesn't pass, and here we are, and they're not talking about cutting those budgets. They're only talking about cutting law enforcement. They didn't bring up the treasurer taking a $100,000 pay cut. No one's mentioned that. No one's mentioned cutting the maintenance department or the clerk's office. Everyone is just talking, let's go cut law enforcement. And it's mind-boggling. We're not in Portland. This is not a Democratic county. This is a Republican county. We're conservatives here in Coos County, and we're about to defund the police. I mean, it's insane. The three commissioners claim they're conservative. John Sweet is absolutely not conservative. But you've got Bob Main and Rod Taylor who would still have a majority. And only one of them has pledged to not defund the police. It's crazy.
So let's go to the clerk's office. What would you see there as possible or potential cuts?
The cut that the clerk proposed was an elections official. She said she, in certain years, like this year when there's a general election, she would have to hire outside help, contracted services, and it would make that cut really ineffective. So I don't know. They only have 5 people, I believe, in the clerk's office, 3 in the actual clerk's office, and then 2 in elections. But this is the question I like to propose is what cuts can you make, and how would those cuts affect Coos County residents? Like, what does it look like on the streets of Coos County if you make these cuts to your budget? And no one really had an answer where it would affect people. Like you and I would go, oh my gosh, let's not do that. The only people were the sheriff's office, the DA, anyone in public safety. But, the maintenance department, they could make cuts. But it was like, well, what would happen? Oh, well, the departments in the county would have to take out their own garbage. And it was a little more complex than that, but that was one of the things. And, I don't care as a taxpayer. I don't have a butler that takes out my garbage. So you can take out your own garbage. At the clerk's office, I don't like that we would be cutting an elections official, because that makes it sound like our elections would be maybe less, secure. They would be wonky, not run properly. But again, we're not talking about just randomly making cuts to the county budget. It's an either or situation. It's, do I want to lose an elections official, or do I want to lose a jail deputy and drop it from 100 beds to 50? Well, I'd rather keep the jail deputy.
So you've owned businesses. I've been in business, and in the positions I've been in, I've had to fire people because we weren't bringing in as much money as we one time were. There have been times when we've had to close down a location and I had to go in, fire an entire crew. I try to salvage all the ones that I could for other positions, but I've gone in and literally have fired the management, everyone who was in the lab, and just eliminated an entire a store's crew because we could no longer feed that store. It was taking too much of the revenue that the other stores were creating, and because it was a loser, we would have to cut that position of all of those people. And this is what makes people mad in the real world. And I keep trying to explain this to the commissioners, and I have over the years, that don't take this tax denial, the loss of this tax personally, because I believe that a lot of this is based on taxes overall. We've got 79 taxing districts in the county. Nothing's prioritized, and it's strange the some of the districts that, as far as I'm concerned, we could do away with get a lot more money than, are half the money that what the county's getting. It's absolutely ridiculous. There are you've got the state income tax, you've got the federal income tax, you've got all these fees, you've got the road tax, you got the gas tax, and people are just taxed to death. And so I don't really blame the commissioners in much of this, because I think that a lot of it is people are just sick and fucking tired of working half the year, if not more than half the year, to pay for other people's salaries. And you know it, and I know it. The federal government could be cut 80, 90%. I guarantee you, if you really wanted to cut it, you could cut a lot of crap out of the feds. You could cut a lot of crap out of the state. But the county is the first line, and the people are tired of paying those taxes, and they don't care who is getting cut. So now the county has to live with those consequences. So at this point, I don't see there's any other way that they're going to get a tax increase. They're going to have to find something else. And that's going to lead into our conversation about the town hall tonight and what Rod Taylor wants to do. And so I want to see if you get my point about the cumulative amount of taxes that we pay. And that's part of the huge problem of why people are just so frustrated.
It's absolutely why people are pissed, and they just, with the past couple years of the economy and inflation and gas skyrocketing, and around here the cost of homes going up, sure, people are sick and tired. They've also normal people mesh together federal, state, local, county, city politics all in one, and people are fed up with the government. So that's part of it too. When you're hearing from your county commissioners that we want to raise property tax, you take all that baggage from the state and federal level and you throw it at your local officials. And I don't know, is that fair? Is that not fair? You said you don't blame the commissioners for a lot of this. I kind of do in this situation. Bob Main was elected in I think he started in 2009. John Sweet started 2 or 3 years later, something like that. These guys have been here the whole time and have not come up with a solution. That's
okay. Let me explain. I don't blame them for the situation of people not wanting to pay taxes. I do blame them 100% for not realizing that people don't want to pay taxes, and that they allowed this to continue to build up to the point where they're now so desperate, they're going to be cutting things that are necessary no matter where they cut from. And that's 100% the commissioner's fault. But as far as taxes itself, I think it's the county would be the last place that I would pull taxes from if they were spending it wisely. And I think that they're a lot tighter than the state and the feds by a huge stretch. You know what I mean? And so the county's the last place I would cut. And first, The first districts I would get rid of is urban renewal districts. The second district I'd get rid of, libraries. Why the hell do I pay for fucking libraries? I don't even go to a fucking library, and I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of these librarians whining and bitching about the little bit of money. Well, actually, they get quite a bit of money that they get. And I think that we way overpay for the schools and the school unions, and it's just absolutely ridiculous, especially the schools, because it goes into the common school fund, and then that goes to the state, and then it's dealt out to the rest of the schools in this other formula that you could make arguments against. So yeah, I agree with you that the commissioners are 100% at fault because they saw this cliff coming. You've been here a couple of years, and this is all we've been talking about since Rod Taylor got elected. And we were talking about it before when Melissa Cribbins was commissioner. So I agree with you on definitely this is 100% the commissioner's fault to this point, because they should have seen this coming.
Well, and we warned them. I mean, you and I think it was a meeting in January and February. We had like a 3-hour work session where we said, do not do this. Don't put a levy on the ballot. Come up with a different plan. The last levy 2 years ago did not pass. This one won't either. And then when they voted the next couple weeks to put the levy on the ballot, you and I both stood up again and we said, you're lying to the people. This isn't a public safety levy. It's a general fund levy. It's to collect money to fund all county services. It's to patch a deficit that you guys know exists, but you're doing nothing about. I mean, they were warned. So, but yeah, we're beating a dead horse with that one. The comment up on the screen a couple back said, they're trying to punish us until we conform to their ideology. And that's absolutely right. It really is right. You wouldn't think that our local people who are close to us that we can physically have contact with, they live in our towns. You wouldn't think they do that to us, but they are. They really are. It's hard for me to read these comments.
Oh, that one there says, and look what we get for our money from the schools. And the schools is a perfect example of where they're shoving the woke agenda, critical race theory down our throat while simultaneously holding our future by holding our children's ability to learn as hostage. And that's what they've done. They have found a way to hold our most precious valuables, our children, which, like I said, is going to be the future of this county, the country. They are holding them hostage, saying, if you don't give us money, the earth is going to stop spinning and the whole thing's going to end. They come up with all the most horrible things the schools do. And as far as I'm concerned, you look at what a private school takes in as far as a budget to educate a child, it's almost half of what a public school is doing for these same kids. And they're pushing all this garbage on them. Stuff that they shouldn't even, once again, they're not prioritizing school the same way the county should be prioritizing law enforcement. It's reading, writing, arithmetic. You get that down, then we'll bring the sciences, history, and CRT will never hit the flag. You know what I mean? This sexualization, this agendization, this indoctrination, all of that needs to go. And I think that's part of the problem with what people are paying with their taxes. They just look at taxes, and I've said this before, change the word taxes out and put in herpes and just ask people, do you want vote for herpes? Do you want more herpes? Do you want to pay for more herpes? And the answer is no. Nobody wants herpes. And you put the word taxes in where herpes is, and it's the same response.
And your point about the library, I love the libraries. I actually go to the library multiple times a week. I was there today, but they definitely don't need the amount of money they're getting. It's a nice facility. It would be nice to have if we were in a rich county with lots of money overflowing, but we're just not. And essentially a library is the basic premise of it is a shelter for books. It's supposed to protect books so they're not ruined from the weather. And they've turned these into essentially mini community centers and homeless shelters. And that's really not what they're about. So, but no, and then the indoctrination at the libraries. They
Yep.
had a thing today on a bingo. You could do a summer reading bingo, and you read a book, and then it filled out the square or something. It was gimmicky, but one of the things was read a book by a Black person. What? Like, not read a book about slavery. Read a book written by a Black person. Why the fuck would it matter what the skin color of the author is? Why would that matter? And allowing that concept into people's minds at a young level is toxic. If you want to read a book about history, about slavery or oppression, read about it across all spectrums. I mean, all sorts of colors and religions were oppressed all throughout history. I'll leave it at that. Because you want to talk about the town hall.
There is a town hall coming up tonight, and if all of you don't know about this is Commissioner Rod Taylor. I think the commissioners, because they're under such pressure, all three of them are kind of at each other's throats. They're not getting along too well. Commissioner Rod Taylor is asking people to show up Monday to a town hall to discuss ways to fund the jail and DA's office. The town hall will be at Marshfield's Heritage Hall across the parking lot to the east of the main building. Most of the parking for that space is in the parking lot below it. This is at Marshfield High School at the Heritage Hall, 6:30 p.m. tonight. And I'm sure you're going to be there, aren't you, Chris?
Yep, I'm going to be there. Lots of people I've heard are going to be there. I really appreciate that Rod Taylor has done this. I asked at the last meeting for this to happen, for there to be a nighttime meeting in the Coos Bay North Bend area for people to attend who are normal working people. And Rod Taylor was the only one who could make it happen. John Sweet said he would do it. Bob Main said they would do it, but they didn't. I don't know why they're not doing it. I don't know if it's past their bedtime. I don't know if that's too far for them to travel. I don't know, but they've decided to bow out. Rod said they just refused. It's crazy. I guess they're hiding.
Well, let's tell everyone, because I talked about this on Friday night, what he wants to do is swap out the county district, the property taxes that go to the county for the county's taxing district, and swap that out for a sales tax. And I really haven't gotten into the details with him on what the sales tax would be on. From what I understood from someone who was on the panel Friday night, that it wouldn't be on food or necessities, it would be on other things. And he thought he could raise 18 million from it. This is something I know you like. In fact, you recommended it. And so I want you to talk on why you would rather see a sales tax instead of a property tax.
Right. So first, let me clarify. I don't agree with taxes. I think it's theft. 100% theft. If I took $100 out of your wallet, Rob, and you didn't want it taken out of your wallet, then that's stealing. And that's what the government does. However, we live in a reality right now where that's just commonplace. So I can be in support of this if it's a swap. If we're reducing our tax burden on one hand and then replacing it with an increased tax burden over here, I can be okay with that as let's start progressing towards something better. Let's move our community towards something better, and then eventually maybe get rid of more taxes down the road. So this would be like a first step. But yeah, Rod's plan was to, I think he was wanting to reduce the entire county tax burden, which is not your full property tax bill.
Right.
A normal average tax bill in Coos County, I think, is at like $13 per thousand assessed value. So out of that $13, we're only talking $1. $1 goes directly to the county. It's like $1.08. So he would like to not collect that dollar. So it would reduce your tax burden as a property owner a little bit, maybe by 1/10, maybe a little less. And then add a 2%. I don't like the 2% number. I thought 1% was better. But he says 2% is what he likes. And then you said the math was like 18 million. I think at 1%, it would be like $9 million. I think that's more reasonable. But essentially, by doing the sales tax, it redistributes the tax burden. So it's not just on property tax owners, it's on anyone who lives or travels through our county. And I think that's really fair. Again, I don't like taxes, it's stealing, but our current tax system is beyond stealing. It's also incredibly lopsided and unfair. So this would rebalance it, and then maybe that would help us move forward into a better direction. I'd like to know why he's asking for 2% instead of 1%. I also have some questions on the logistics. If it goes on the ballot, can it be this whole monster of a ballot measure where it does multiple things at once? It reduces property tax burden, it increases sales tax, and it sets standards for law enforcement. Because that's the other thing. We can't do this and ignore the law enforcement part of it. We have to set minimum standards for funding law enforcement. We have to say there's a need in this county for 150 jail beds and 9 prosecuting attorneys and a certain number of deputies on patrol at all time. We have to set some sort of minimal standard, and then we can rearrange the tax burden so that we know that we're spending the money appropriately on the right things first, and then the leftover money, hopefully they would be saving leftover money. But if they want to use that on the assessor or the clerk or the maintenance department, I guess that's what they'll do. But they need to fund law enforcement first. That needs to be part of this plan. But I also really hope that Rod understands this can't be a distraction again. They have 2 separate problems. They have the current deficit that's at like $4 million. And then they have the problem going forward of that deficit will increase every year if they don't solve the revenue problem. So they have to be talked about separately. The commissioners have to find a way to stop the bleeding now in this current year and then fix it going forward. So I think Rod is also going to talk about that. There's money, like we mentioned earlier, in the forestry fund. I believe he's interested in using that money to plug the deficit this year, and then hoping a sales tax will pass on the November ballot. It's going to be tough, though. People do not like the idea of sales tax.
No.
I know when I moved to Oregon, it was pretty sweet to be able to not pay sales tax. I came from states like Pennsylvania and New York and California who have high sales tax. And I kind of liked it not having to pay sales tax. But he did say pharmaceuticals and food would be out. I believe he would probably end up throwing a few more things into there, but there would definitely have to be some exclusions. You wouldn't want a homeowner who could have done a renovation this year and it costs a certain amount of money to then go and buy all the materials for renovation next year and it cost him 2% more. 2% is just a little, but we're pinching pennies at this point. That ends up being a lot when you're buying tens of thousands of dollars in material. And imagine a business buying those same materials.
Yeah, we were putting on a new roof. You're looking at $40,000. You add on 2% on that, it starts to hurt a little bit. And that's the kinds of things that people are worried about. I've talked about the advantages of a sales tax. One is that it matches the inflation. When you get bigger inflation, you get more sales tax, so it matches the inflation, unlike the property taxes do. 2, it pulls in people who right now are what I call the users and the takers, the people who are the moochers of society. They live on the fringe, they do drugs, they take a lot of money from EBT, they take a lot of money from the feds, And at least they would have to pay some tax when they get to the cash register as well, unlike property taxes. If you don't live on, or if you don't rent anything, you don't own any property, you're not paying any property taxes. And this would make it more fair to bring them in too. Rich people buy a lot more crap than I do. And if they buy more crap, that means they're going to pay more in tax. So I think that's also fair. So it's fair at the top, it's fair at the bottom. Well, and it's more fair for us in the middle. Three, you get a direct link between seeing what you're paying at the cash register than what you're paying when you get the property tax bill, because it all comes in a cumulative sum. And most people don't realize what goes to the different 79 taxing districts. Not that everyone lives in those 79 taxing districts, but there are 79 in the county, and the ones that you live in, a lot of people can't distinguish one from the other. Here are the drawbacks. A lot of times you'll get these taxes, sales tax, and they keep going up, 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 and up nonstop. I've seen that where I live in New Mexico. I think when I first moved there, it was like a 4 or 5 cent tax on everything. Food, you buy milk, there's a tax on it. Now it's huge. It's a huge tax on what they're spending on it. And people are worried that if they put a sales tax on, they're not going to actually get rid of the property tax, and they're going to get a double whammy. And so there's a lot of logistics with this that, I'll be honest with you, Chris, no matter how well it's explained, I don't think anyone's going to buy it here in the county.
Well, so yeah, the logistics have to work out. Like if one of those pieces of that puzzle aren't there, the whole thing falls apart. Like if they're not able to do all these changes in one ballot measure, and let's say they split it out and there's one ballot measure to increase or to add a sales tax, and then there's another ballot measure to reduce property tax. Well, guess what? The property tax reduction will pass and the sales tax increase won't. And they'll be totally fucked. They'll be way more fucked than they are now. So it has to all be in one ballot measure, and we'll have to see. I mean, that's why we live in a society where we can vote on these things. The people who are worried about it just going up and up and up, I'm almost positive the increases would have to be voted on by the people. So it's not something that the commissioners would have control over to just willy-nilly increase sales tax. So that fear is really unfounded. But like you said, it would have to be communicated to people properly. And right. I think Rod's doing a good job. I think he could do a better job. He could come out and be more clear, more engaged on social media or something. But he's doing a good job, and he's doing this town hall, and I think that'll help. But we're going to have a lot of people that fight it on both sides of the aisle, and we'll have to see what happens. If the people don't want it, though, then they don't want it. And that's the reality we live in, and we'll have to come up with another solution. But that's kind of been the problem this whole time. They have not wanted to come up with new solutions. They didn't want to talk with any of us, you, me, anybody who came in there and said, hey, I've got an idea. They were condescending. They called us liars. They were ignoring the situation. That's no way to treat your citizens that are trying to figure out how to get this all to work. So that needs to change. I see some hope in Rod Taylor that he's realizing that and recognizing it, and he's starting to listen to the people more. So I appreciate it. This message that you have up on the screen, I mean, that is the sort of stuff we should see coming out of our conservative commissioners. This is the sort of messaging that we want to see from our local leaders. I don't know why it's taken so long, but I appreciate this statement.
Well, and here's the thing. This statement would never have happened if the tax levy would have passed. That's the sad part. And I supported and voted for Rod Taylor, and I have been unhappy with several of his decisions. Not all of them, but several of his decisions I just been unhappy with. And here, I'll read this out loud so everyone can see what's up on screen. It says, in budget deliberations, I will not vote for any proposal that curtails public safety. This includes the Sheriff's Department, the jail, and the District Attorney's Prosecution Division. These institutions must remain fully funded in order to protect the safety of the public and the rule of law in Coos County. The jail must remain open with a minimum of 2 pods, and the goal of the 3rd open pod should remain on the table in the shortest term possible, which I think most people would agree with. But I'll be honest with you, Chris, I don't think it matters how many of those damn pods they have open, because the justice system is working just the way the radical left wants it to work, and it works in favor of the criminals because they have sabotaged it from the legislature, from the governor. The loss of funding that's not going to be the funding that's not going to be used for public defenders. People who don't get a public attorney within 7 days, they're released. We have no cash bail. A lot of people are released. They just can't keep them, even if there were jail beds there. And the fact that we just had another mental facility closed down in Salem means that they're putting that on the backs of the counties. It's basically, as far as I'm concerned, an unfunded mandate to make the counties responsible for the mentally ill in their counties. That's going to be a problem here. And I just don't think that no matter what we do, I just think that the system is broke from the top down, not from the bottom up, and that this tax failure and us hitting the wall was absolutely necessary. And I think they're going to come out a stronger, leaner machine. And Commissioner Taylor's statement right here, I think, kind of proves that they're trying to work to that. At least he is, I should say.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you're saying. We're screwed by the state and federal level for sure. But there are still little things we can do locally. And there's 2 main things that will help by funding the jail, by getting it up to full capacity. The what are they called? The judges. Geez.
Yes.
The judges will hand out sentences that are longer than they have been if they have more jail space. So for instance, if somebody should be getting 6 months in jail, right now they're getting like 5 days. That's not a joke. That's actual reality. Right. Sometimes they're not even getting anything. They just don't have the jail space. So they'll normally give them a 6-month sentence. Because there's not a lot of jail space, they'll give them a 10-day sentence. They'll take them down to the jail, realize there's no beds, and let them go. That's our current situation. So if we had more jail space, they would not only stay for that full 10 days that they were sentenced, but in time, as things progress, the judges will start handing out longer sentences. They will realize that they can sentence these people to 3 months, 6 months in our county jail, and that we have the bed space and the capacity for them. So that'll take some time for us to see that work. The second thing is we're up against other counties. And what I mean by that is so in September, they're essentially recriminalizing drugs a little bit. And what'll happen is all these other counties that have jail space, these people doing drugs in public will get arrested, taken to jail in those counties, and it will be really annoying and irritating for them to have to go to jail and go through that whole legal process. So guess what will happen? They'll flock to Coos County where they don't get arrested for that stuff. If they're getting arrested in other counties for disorderly conduct, shoplifting, trespass, but they don't get arrested here, do you know how quickly word will get out? Do you know how many people will come from Eugene and Medford or Florence or Reedsport even and come down to Coos County because they
except one thing though, that would be a logical, and this is what the sheriff said. I want to play that video if I can, but it's what the sheriff said. But my retort to that would be Curry, Douglas, Jackson, Josephine, Lynn, and probably about a dozen more counties are in the same position with their jails as we are. So once again, really, would that matter?
So I think, yeah, like Douglas County, right? Their public safety levy failed. Or
Yep.
no, it was
Curry County.
Curry County.
It was $2.23 per 1,000. I mean, it was going to fail no matter what.
Yeah. So you're right. There are other counties that are in similar situations. I don't know if they're quite as bad as ours. They might be equally as bad, but we're only talking a handful of counties. I think there's 34 in Oregon in total.
36.
And, 36. I was wrong. But if only a handful of them are essentially sanctuary counties, they're going to come here, and they're going to come here from other states like Idaho and Arizona and Utah. They're already doing that. These other conservative states where they crack down on crime, they're coming here from those states because they can get away with stuff. They can use drugs all day long. They can steal shit from our grocery stores and trespass on our private property and get away with it all day long. And we can do something about that. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to be an investment. We got to invest in the jail and the DA's office. And it, like you said, it won't solve all our problems. We're dealing with a public defender issue from the state level. We're dealing with ridiculous legislation at the state level. So some of that it's not in our hands to solve. But I feel like we have a duty to do everything we can. But you know what? If our county commissioners decide to defund the police and we enter an even weirder state of lawlessness around here, then I think us citizens are going to have to take matters into our own hands. So
I want to talk to you about that, but let me play this video first.
Thank you. Of course, we take the charge seriously, and it's obviously I think every department is important. I get that as well. You know, they have great people and they do a good job. Some of the considerations we're looking at, we talked about maybe completely getting rid of patrol and just having a jail, but in 4002 recriminalized drugs. Come September, who's in Curry?
Did you put your name in there?
That didn't pass a levy of some sort recently. Josephine got the passing district. Mary and Lynn, they got a levy passed. It sounds like Douglas might be in trouble, but they have a much better base than us. We're going to be the sanctuary for criminals and drugs. We're going to be 110 was for Oregon here, and I'm really concerned about it. So I can't eliminate patrol. It's too important. It's 43.6% of the population of the county, over everything but 29 square miles that they take care of, with 2 or 3 right now. And you're right about the unfunded mandates. I have a mandate to be accredited by July of 26. From what I hear with other counties, that takes upwards of 6 to 9 years and $500,000. That's something I'm gonna have to talk to you guys about soon. Just found out the state is continually, the Department of Agriculture is gonna charge us to come down and look at our books, how many dogs we got once a year. Anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500, $2,200, I guess. And that's not a lot of money, really, but it's really frustrating. So we've looked at stuff, how do we make up a difference? How can we help? Because we're in the general fund, and police should never be a money-making venture. But do we charge a booking fee for the cities? They're not in any better shape than us. Do we charge for animal control? Not a mandate that we go into cities and collect their dogs. I don't want to do that. I want to be a good partner to them, but I don't know that we're going to have a choice. So that's some stuff we'll talk about again in the future. So when we looked at this, we looked at a modular concept. What does it cost to close down a pod? What does it cost to get rid of one whole shift on patrol? Or we might have to leave the county unprotected overnight.
And so there you go. Him basically reiterating what you've already said, other than the price or the cost of the actual pod when they were talking during the election and stuff. But I want to get back to a statement that you made, that people may have to start taking care of this themselves. And I have experienced this. Rob from Base and Tackle has experienced this personally, where a lot of times and I think this is something that's being trained in law enforcement now. They're so quick to take the side of the criminal over the side of the property owner or the upstanding citizen, when the upstanding citizen or the property owner defends their property, defends themselves from these scumbags who are living on the streets. And then the cop shows up. I'll give you an example. There was a guy at 7-Eleven, walked out of 7-Eleven. There's a scumbag going through his car. He grabs the guy out of the car, roughs him up a little bit. And when the police show up, they don't arrest the guy or give the guy a ticket. They want to know if he wants to press charges against the driver of the car that he was ransacking.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, I hear story after story. I mean, when I was running during the election, people were messaging me these stories on the daily. It's wild. It's a state issue. It's a federal issue. There are also local cops. It's hit or miss. And I really want to support law enforcement, but sometimes these cops, yeah, they're not, I don't know if they're tired of all the hoops they would have to jump through to arrest a bum. I don't know, but they side with the bums. They side with the criminals. They side with the junkies. And I don't know if that's a personal thing or if it's coming down from city councils or coming down from state legislation. I think it's kind of a mixed bag of all of that. It's a shame. I really don't need to beat up on law enforcement, but man, it's a shame the way our society is unfolding right now. And that's kind of why I'm fighting this fight. Like, why would we, if we're in that situation, like you just described, why would we have less jail beds? Why would we have less prosecutors? Why would we do things that we know would make it worse instead of make it better? But hey, maybe we've had these conversations before. Like maybe in a weird way, worse is better. Maybe it has to get worse first to get better. I don't know.
And you know, I had a young lady who was on the show Friday night who I kept talking about. It's going to the point where we're going to be Charles Bronson, the character in Death Wish. I don't know if you're old enough to remember those movies. I think Bruce Willis made a new Death Wish where, you know, he was a vigilante, and she kept holding her ears. I'm not part of this. I don't want to hear this. But I got news for people out there. And you know this is true because we've talked about this. We are at war, an ideological war in this country. And they are trying to create a new class of victims, the people who are oppressed and the people who are oppressors. And of course, anyone who owns property, who's white, who has a certain standing in the community, they're the oppressor. And people who are these drug-addled criminals, somehow they're the oppressed. And then there's a whole bunch of other groups that I don't need to get into right now because it really doesn't fit into this conversation so much. But they want to create the new proletariat versus the bourgeoisie. That's what the communists was fighting against, the bourgeoisie, and wanted to empower the workers, the proletariat. And I believe, and I know many of them out there do, that the rewriting of the law is creating a situation where they're going to create this new proletariat, not the workers, but from the downtrodden underclass minorities in all these different groups who have different privileges, rights. They call them rights. They're just privileges that they're given over everyone else. And that's what I see with law enforcement taking the side of the criminal all the time. But at a certain point, if they're going to take the side of the criminal and we're going to be the ones who are adjudicated, who are put through the system and put into jail, then at that point, I want to defund the broken legal system. I don't want to defund the police. If the police were doing their job and enforcing the law, I'd be for that. But like you said, maybe it has to get worse so that good men can do what good men have to do in society to stop this ideological war in the streets where they're empowering the criminals. And now if a guy finds somebody rummaging through their car and he beats the crap out of them, maybe nobody's going to respond because there's going to be no police, no sheriff, no DA to prosecute anyone there to harass the guy who's actually defending his rights. And you know what I'm talking about. It may have to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, and vigilantism. I mean, people have called me a vigilante because I go into a bum camp and talk to these people. Apparently, that's being a vigilante. It's like, are you kidding me? And yeah, go defund the police, and then you'll see some vigilantism. But I mean, I don't want to go there. I don't want that to be our situation. Why wouldn't we just use the money we have and give it to the jail and the DA to get done what needs to get done to put these criminals away and get them off our streets? That for me is a no-brainer. I get what you're saying. Maybe take away patrol. I mean, I don't like it, but yeah, maybe because we can't hold people in our basement, right? We're not allowed to go and arrest
Right.
somebody and hold them in our basement. So you got to have a jail. We can't have a trial. Me and you have a trial for somebody that we think committed a crime. No, so you need the courts, but do we need patrol? Maybe not. Maybe you and I and some other people could have some basic training like a volunteer fire department would, and know how to respond to a call, know how to respond and show up and properly handle a scene. I mean, if somebody broke into a business at 2 a.m. and you and I show up, that doesn't mean we're going to beat the shit out of them, but we're going to show up and we're going to arrest the guy and we're going to take him to the jail. But if there's no jail to take him to, then guess what? Maybe you and I are going to beat the shit out of them. And so, but we all have to choose, what kind of society do we want to live in?
Right.
I don't really want to have to live in that society. I want to be able to live in my house and go to work and take kids to school and do all the things that a normal society would do and not have to worry about crime and enforcing crime. I'm not a police officer. I don't want to have to do that. But if they force our hand by removing these structures of society like the court system and the jail, well, men like you and I are not going to sit by and allow that to just happen without consequences. We're not going to allow people, criminals, to run around, rob our businesses, commit sexual assault, steal things, break in to homes. Like, we're not going to allow that. We're not going to allow that.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't really know where our leaders think they're taking our county or our cities. But it sure as shit isn't a direction I want to go.
And that's why we just had to have had that part of this conversation, because I think in a lot of ways, this what we just discussed in the last 5-10 minutes is not being discussed in reality in the commissioners' chambers. It's not being discussed by the cities, the councilors. They would never have this discussion. But the fact is what you and I just talked about, it's on a lot of people's mind. And that's where they think this is eventually going to take this. And it's a scary situation. I don't want to downplay it because it could be a very real thing. But Chris, I got to ask you a question. And this is because this has come up. Somebody has asked me about this and they wanted me to ask you about this, because we heard your answer a while back, what you think of taxes. And I agree with you. Tax is theft. Property tax is the worst kind of theft. And it's wrong. It's immoral. And if I could get away with not paying taxes, I wouldn't pay taxes. But I'm terrified they're going to come and take my property. I have to, I don't know if this has been public or not, but it's something that people can find out through public information. And somebody has and dug it up and sent me a question. You yourself, you own property. You own 2 pieces of property in Coos County, and you have not paid property taxes on either of those lots in the last 2 years, and they're under your LLC. Would you respond to that? Because I think I know what your answer is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I'm not paying taxes if they're not being spent properly, 100%. And I don't think you should either. I would like to see a tax revolt, especially if we're in a situation where they're defunding the police. Why the fuck would anyone pay their taxes to the county? Why would they? I don't know. I get a lot of criticism for it. A lot of people who know me personally know that this is my position. And they tell me, oh, well, if I pay them, then you should too. Well,
Isn't that
yeah.
a weird? Okay, that's a weird mindset because I pay taxes, but I kind of look at you as, boy, that guy's got balls. I wish I had brass balls like that. I mean, I push the limit on a lot of things. I'll be quite honest with you. You'll be lucky to find a seatbelt on me, and I probably shouldn't be saying that because the cops are going to be looking out. I hate the seatbelt law. I don't wear seatbelts, and if they catch me, I'm willing to pay the ticket because I'm pissed off that someone's telling me I have to restrain myself in my car. And so I look at you and I think, I wish I could be in that position. I've just built up too much. My family, I shouldn't say my family has built up a lot of property, and I'd hate to see it lost because we do pay a lot in taxes, but they can really hurt you by taking away what you own and how you make money.
Sure, they could come and take my property. Come and get it.
Right.
Watch what happens when you try and come and take my property. The other thing, there's some logistics. I mean, you cannot pay your property tax for 5 years and they can't come after you. So maybe when I hit that 5-year mark, I'll have to make a decision and we'll see how big my balls are then. I don't know. It would take a lot longer for them after that to come and take my property by force. We'll see where the world is in 5 years. I don't know. But it's a decision I've made so far, and I don't believe in it. If I saw a county government properly using the money that's being given to them, sure, I would pay the tax. I would still be vehemently opposed to it, but I wouldn't be so opposed to it that I would put myself at risk. Right now, I'm putting myself at risk. I'm putting any of my family at risk. I mean, it's a real thing, but that's not a reason to do it. You shouldn't just pay this stuff because you're afraid of what they can do to you. Now, there is some reality, if you have a family or a business and they are coming after you and taking it from you, that's a reality. And so I don't judge people. I don't blame them. But man, I mean, car registration. Why the fuck do we pay car registration?
It's the worst thing. We're paying for the administration that's really keeping us under lock and key. The DMV is one of the worst bureaucracies ever created out there. Why would I have to buy a license plate and register a car from a bureaucracy when really all that information could be done at the point of sale? I mean, there's literally all that information, because that's all it is information. Oh, it's got a license plate, and the dealership, are not the dealership, but the people who make the car manufacturers, they put a number on the engine. What's that called? The number on the engines, I'm losing it now, but they put identifying numbers on cars, and I don't see a problem with putting a license plate on there, but why do we have to pay so much for it? I mean, it's a piece of tin. This should be $5 and it should last me my lifetime, or at least the lifetime of the car.
Do criminals pay for the jail bed they're in? No.
Right.
So why do you pay for the tin to make your license plate? I mean, some of this shit is crazy. If you back up and you think, what things in my life am I doing because I'm afraid of what they'll do to me? If you take that out of it, there's a whole bunch of shit that we do as Americans that's just totally asinine. I mean, you have a cell phone, right, Rob?
Right.
Well, do you have cell phone registration? Do you have registration for your cell phone? No. Do you have registration for your laptop or for your wallet? I mean, like, what do you have registration for the shoes you're wearing? No, because it's an asinine concept. But for some reason, everybody pays their car registration. Well, not everybody, but you know what I mean.
Right. And so I'm glad you took this on, because this wasn't something that really came out during the election, even though I know if someone asked you, you would have answered it. And I'm glad you answered this question now, because it was something that I think, because if you run again, I think everything should be on the tables, because I can tell you right now, bud, you've pissed off a lot of people at the county. You've pissed off people at the county. I think even the sheriff is a little pissed off at you. I don't know if you talked to Paul, but I imagine he's a little pissed off at you right now. And it's silly because they're blaming you, and I'm sure they'll blame me. They'll blame Matt Wilbanks. They'll blame others for this election going down because we spoke out against it. But the fact is they lost to 60% of the people who voted in the election. That is huge. There is no one person in this county who could have that much sway. You know, we might have gotten 100, a couple hundred, maybe a couple of thousand, but 60%, that just didn't happen. We didn't cause that. That's a message to the commissioners. And I think it's a message that a lot of people are going to be sending across the country in the next couple of years because they're tired of paying taxes and watching it being spent just pissed away.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad I pissed off people at the county because they're not my friends. They're not the people that matter. They really aren't. I mean, there's a couple people there that I really appreciate. Gabe, the sheriff, has always been good to me. He's always available if I need to talk to him about something, and he's very informative. And there's some other people like that. I mean, even the treasurer, I do not get along with the treasurer, but she knows her stuff and she's providing me with information from time to time. But I'm glad I pissed them off because they need to know that we're pissed too. We're
Right.
pissed at them. The county is not functioning properly. But yeah, and the tax thing, if people want to try and use that against me, that's hilarious. I mean, come after me, make me a martyr. Go ahead. Also, I'm not a sovereign citizen. I want to make that clear. Sovereign citizens, I think they have this concept that they don't need to pay these things or you know, like have car insurance or a license and they can get away with it. Like they're allowed to not do that.
Right.
And the reality is you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to not pay your property tax. You're not allowed to drive without a license. You're not allowed.
There'll be a price to pay for it, and you're willing to pay that price. That's the difference between you and a sovereign citizen. Thank you for making that point because there's a lot of people out there. And I've had friends who are sovereign citizen. And I told them, yeah, whatever you want to call yourself, they're still going to take you to jail. They're still going to prosecute you. And I've had them literally call me on the phone, Rob, I'm in jail and I'm a sovereign citizen. Yeah, well, that's bullshit. It don't mean anything. We're all really sovereign citizens, but we still have to follow the laws that they have passed. And if you are a true rebel, then you've got to accept that you're going to pay the consequences that society is going to put upon people when society, as far as I'm concerned, is wrong. Society is wrong to be taxing income. Society is wrong to be taxing people who own property. There is a comment here. I'll just put it up. It's by Alex Bowser. It says, if I live long enough, the property tax will take it all. And that is a fact. My mother, eventually, she's going to lose my father, which is going to take away a huge income because they live off of what? The government, the social security system that they paid into. They paid into that system, and they don't get a whole lot. In fact, illegal immigrants get more than my parents do from what they pay in. And eventually, once he passes, she's going to lose his part of the Social Security that they get. And the inflation is going to eat up more and more of her Social Security, and they're still going to tax her. And eventually, she's not going to be able to pay those taxes if she was to live long enough. She's 78 right now. You know what I mean? I don't expect her to live another 20 or 30 years, maybe if I'm lucky, but you know what I mean? It would be nice, but she would be broke because they're going to take it from her in the form of taxes and inflation, which is another form of tax if people don't realize that.
It's crazy when you start adding up the property tax and then the utilities. I mean, cost of electricity going through the roof. The water and sewer charges in the cities is going through the roof, especially North Bend is going to really have to increase theirs. I don't know how people do it. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I live off grid, so my utilities are already paid for. We have a spring. I am extremely lucky that I have that. So yeah, I don't know how people do it, especially elderly people who are living off of fixed income. Yep. And everything's just going up and up and up. Not to mention groceries and gas and everything. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. we need some big things to start changing at every level of government. And
Yeah,
I don't
would
know.
agree.
I don't know where we go.
I really don't know where we go. And that's when people go, well, you got any answers? Well, no, if I did, I'd be a billionaire. And with that, I've had you on for an hour and 20 minutes. We're going to have to be getting ready soon. We got a town hall to go to tonight at Marshfield High School at 6:30 p.m. Before I get you out of here, is there any last thing you would want to tell people about this subject or any other subject?
Yeah, just please get involved. I know that you hear that all the time and it's crap. Like you're like, hey, I'm already involved. I pay taxes, and I have a brain. But we're in a situation where we're in a small town, we're in a rural county, and your voice, just one voice, can make a huge difference. Literally, at one of these commissioner meetings or city council meetings, only a couple people speak. So
Yeah.
if you stand up and you add one more voice in there, it's a huge flex. It works. And so tonight there's a meeting. It's more informational. I hope people don't go there thinking that they're going to scream at Rod and change his mind or anything, because he's on our side. He's trying to find solutions. So I hope people are just kind of asking questions and getting information. Tomorrow, though, there's a morning commissioner meeting at 9 a.m. and then, or 9, is it 9:30?
9:30.
9:30 at the Owen building. And then at 2:30 or 2 o'clock, somewhere in the afternoon, is another budget work session. I don't think any decisions are going to be made at any of these meetings. So stay tuned, because I think there will be a meeting in the future, maybe in the next couple of weeks, where there will be some decision making, some votes happening. And depending on which way this goes, that could be a very crucial meeting to attend.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt to come to these and speak up and get used to engaging with these leaders and telling them how you feel. It's helpful. They live in little bubbles, little silos, and they only hear from the county employees and their little circle of friends all the time, and they're not hearing from regular citizens. So that needs to change. It can change, and we can affect change at a local level. I don't know how to do that on a state and federal level without massive investments in money. And I don't know how you flip Oregon from blue to red. I just don't know if that'll ever happen.
Yeah, they've been trying it since I moved here and before. They've been, and it was at one time a red state, and
it probably still is.
Yeah, it probably still is. Yeah, who knows what's going on with that? Well, Chris, thank you for joining us, and I will see you tonight. Okay.
I'll see you later.
All right, man. Take care. And that was Chris Castleman. I appreciate him joining me. It's not always easy to get up in public and throw yourself out there, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say things that aren't 100% accurate, and you go back and you discuss those things, and you find out where you might have made a mistake and you correct that. And, I'm glad he talked about several different issues that was controversial. And we all have those choices to make. Like I said, I'm willingly admit I rarely ever wear my seatbelt. Of course, I'm going to wear it tonight because I got a feeling if there are any cops watching, they might want to stop me. But I normally don't, because I don't think it's anyone's business whether I wear a seatbelt or not. It's I have a shoulder problem, and it's very painful after a while to wear those seatbelts. And if anyone gets hurt, it's going to be me. So why would anyone care whether I have this thing on or not? And like I said, there are thousands of laws, thousands of them, tens of thousands. I've seen books written on this that are just absolutely useless, and it's time to get rid of them. And one of the things they're trying to force down our throat now, right now is these windmills, these wind turbines. I'm opposed to the windmills. We're having the Stop the Windmills rally against the windmills at high noon this Saturday. Hopefully I'll have some new signs to hand out. I think we're going to get those new signs. And if not, make your own sign, and please bring in an American flag. Let's show everyone we're very patriotic. This is no other rally for no other issue other than windmills. So if don't bring other flags. I don't want to see Trump flags. I don't want to see any other flags other than really the American flag. Not that I'm a control freak. If someone shows up with something, I'm not going to tell them what they can and can't do during a rally. But you do have a right to freedom of speech. I just want to keep this for the windmills because it's been a beautiful thing. There are people on the left that I haven't seen in years that I've seen at these windmill meetings, and we agree. We almost never agree on anything, but yet for the wind turbines, they don't like this project either. A lot of people on the left, a lot of Democrats hate the wind turbines just as much as I do. So I want to keep these protests just for wind turbines. This is happening this Saturday, Coos Bay Boardwalk, high noon, June 22nd. We're going to be on the sidewalk and we're going to be protesting the windmills, and we're having 2 rallies in one day. That's how we've been doing it. 2 rallies in one day. How do you like that? We're badass. And so at 1:30, we're going to shut down the rally at the boardwalk, and then we're going to head over to down to Bandon, Oregon, in front of Ray's, right there on Highway 101 in Ray's. We are going to meet there at 2:00 on the same Saturday, this Saturday in Bandon, Oregon, Highway 101 and Ray's. And it starts out at noon at the Coos Bay Boardwalk. So please show up. I mean, we need your support. If we don't get your support, who knows if we're going to have any effect on these carpetbaggers who are coming out here. I don't know if you could call someone a carpetbagger if they're taking the ocean. I don't know. Maybe that's a whole other name. I don't know. But there is a couple of stories that I wanted to talk about. Partly because Dr. Frank is going to be coming to town, and he's been working on election integrity. And for those of you who don't think that there's election fraud, I want you to read the headline of the image that I have on the screen right now. It says 4 Connecticut Dems are charged after videos showed them stuffing a ballot box and triggering a new mayoral election. This actually happened. These were Democrats cheating against other Democrats. The incident triggered a challenge to the primary results, prompting a judge to call for a redo election. That's right, ballot stuffing. People who were caught and who are now being charged with ballot stuffing. I'm not sure what the actual charge is called. Maybe I'll read it here in the article. But they are being charged because they were stuffing the ballot and trying to sway the election. Actually happened. This was in Connecticut, prompting a judge to call for a redo election. Our campaign workers in Connecticut were charged with misuse of absentee ballots years after the involvement in the 2019 Bridgeport Democratic mayoral primary scandal. Once again, this is great. This is going back to 2019, but they're holding these people accountable, and they should be held accountable. They should be holding Thomas Tuttle accountable. They should be looking into his voting record. This Thomas Tuttle is the very wealthy contributor to the David Brock Smith campaign, and he seems to have been voting, apparently, allegedly, in grants are in Gold Beach, Oregon, and in San Francisco, California since 2012. How do you like that? We've turned him in. We tried to get the government to look at it, but they didn't look at it. I don't know why. They said the statute of limitations is up. I don't know if that's true for the federal government. We're going to find out, because we're going to send that information about Tuttle to the federal government, because just like these people, he voted in the 2020 general election, and he voted in the primary election, but he for 2 different primaries in 2 different states, but he voted on the same day in 2018. And so we're going to find out if there is a statute of limitations on that for federal charges. The state refused the charge, both states, California and Oregon. And so all we got is just evidence allegedly showing voter fraud by a man living here in Oregon. So if they tell you voter fraud doesn't happen, it does happen. The proof is right there on the screen right now. The charges were announced on Tuesday, this last Tuesday, against Bridgeport City Councilman Alfred Castillo, vice chair of the city's Democratic Party leader, as well as 2 2019 campaign workers who worked for the city's mayor, Mayor Joe Gannon, and Josephine Edmonds, who worked for the Ganem primary rival Marilyn Moore. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? The Democrats eating each other. All 4 were accused of unlawful possession. The group initially faced accusations of mishandling absentee ballots in the mayoral primary race in September 2019. Investigators say the incumbent mayor, Joe Ganem, eked out a narrow victory in the primary race, defeating John Gomes by just 251 votes. So right there, you can see that just a little bit can mean a lot. That's only 250 votes. And I thought this was interesting. I saw this on Twitter. There was a video going around of a lady who was talking about ranked choice voting. This is what's coming to Oregon. They're going to be shoving this ranked choice voting down our throat. And you got to figure out how to do it. But don't listen to this lady. She's a Democrat. She's a liberal. She's a leftist. And she doesn't know what she's talking about. This is completely wrong about ranked choice voting and how they do it. And I'm going to have people who are experts in ranked choice voting on the podcast to discuss it in a couple of weeks. We're going to have them on the show. But I wanted you to watch this video because it's
Ranked
just
choice voting, which allows you to vote for your top 6 candidates. And so your first choice gets your vote unless they are eliminated due to having too many votes, or if they have a huge majority of votes, then the votes that are above 25% get redistributed to your second choice, third choice, fourth choice, and so on candidates. So it really behooves you to vote for all 6, because in the event that your favorite candidate gets eliminated, your vote still counts for your second candidate, your second favorite candidate. So for the district, you need 25% of the vote plus 1 to win. So they keep eliminating candidates until 3 different people get 25% of the vote.
That's confusing. I don't know.
So the other thing is that you can go to portland.gov/vote and you can do a practice run of the ranked choice voting system. So that will give you an idea of how that all works and how it shapes out and what the algorithm looks like.
Practice run, like a template.
Simulation.
Yeah, so you can put like flavors of ice cream and send your friends to the link to your little election, basically, and you can elect your favorite flavor of ice cream. You can vote for 6 flavors of ice cream. You kind of see how the elimination rounds work, so that you can get a better idea of how it functions in practice.
Okay, I don't know if you guys understood that, but well, whatever, lady, whatever. You got to vote for all 6 if you even want to have your vote counted. But we're going to take the winner, we're going to make him the loser, and give everyone else his winnings, and that's going to, I don't know, create equity in the election so that our guy will always win every time. And yeah, right, hippy dippy lady. Not listening to you. Yeah, these Democrats have some weird ideas about the election. There's nothing wrong with having the election the way it's always been. The person who garners the most votes wins, period. That's the way it should be. That's the way it's been for a long time, and it works. It works fine. It hasn't worked so well in Oregon since we got in the mail-in voting, but this was interesting that Robert E. Kennedy, he put out this meme where he says Puerto Rico's primary elections just experienced hundreds of voting irregularities related to electronic voting machines, according to the Associated Press. Luckily, there was a paper trail so the problem was identified and vote tallies corrected. What happens in jurisdictions where there is no paper trail? What does happen when there is no paper trail? Well, you get the 2020 election results that we got. But I continue with this Robert Kennedy tweet that he had there. Is it called a tweet? Because it's now X. Maybe it's an X. He X'd everyone. But U.S. citizens need to know that every one of their votes were counted and that their elections cannot be hacked. We need to return to paper ballots to avoid electronic interference with elections. My administration will require paper ballots, and we will guarantee honest and fair elections, which sounds great. But what Robert Kennedy doesn't say is that he's opposed to people having to show their IDs to vote in these paper ballot elections. So, I'm all for the paper ballot. That works for me. I'm good with that. But the thing is that we better, on top of that, we better have people who are going in there with a real ID, and we're able to identify them. And it was nice that Robert F. Kennedy said this, and Elon Musk added to that tweet. If it is a tweet, I still haven't confirmed that, but we should eliminate electronic voting machines. The risk of being hacked by humans or AI, while small, is still too high. And I don't know if it is too small there, Elon. I don't know if it is too small. It seems like if you start adding up the accumulative amount of votes that seem to have swapped over the last election in different districts all over the United States in different states, seems to be quite a few that were messed with. And I don't know if the number is too small, but he's right. Even if it is small, just like that election where they were stuffing the ballot in Connecticut that I just showed you, the mayor only won by 251 votes. 251 votes. So how small is too small? Is 251 votes too small? I think not. That's just something we need to consider when we're going forward with this election integrity. And like I said, I hope to have Dr. Frank on the show to talk more about election integrity. He's got a lot of new stuff he wants to talk about. And then hopefully I'll have someone who's an expert, not like that crazy bitch we just saw from the Democratic Party. That bitch is crazy. So don't listen to her about ranked choice voting, because that's not quite how that works, even though it's a very bad process and there's nothing wrong with winner take all, just the way we do it now. If you win, you win. You don't, you don't. And you win by getting the most votes. And that's just how it should be. They just practice these schemes so that they can just get their candidates elected. So let's go back to paper ballots. Let's go back to regular voting, or let's keep regular voting, and let's make sure people will show a valid, real ID when they go into the polling place. That's all we're asking. Is that so much to ask, that you want to have faith in your elections? Well, yeah, I guess it is. One of the interesting things I've been talking about is the Supreme Court rulings on the Second Amendment. They've had a couple of rulings on the Second Amendment. They're going to have a few more coming out soon. And it's getting very interesting because they've had other rulings that are just as controversial. And I kind of wanted to put my 2 cents in on this. The Supreme Court preserves access to an abortion pill. And this is the abortion pill that you take the night after. And, abortion is a nasty thing. And I don't care how you try to spin abortion. Abortion is killing babies. If you have an abortion, you killed a baby. You killed your baby. And if there are people out there who support abortion, which many people in this world do, you're supporting the murdering of babies. You're supporting that babies get murdered. Now, I will tell you right now, I'm one of those who, there are women out there who shouldn't be mothers. And they shouldn't be giving birth because they're just not good people. And they shouldn't be having babies. And the thing is I'm against abortion, but I think there has to be some compromise on this whole issue because of the crazy people out there, because of people who are in desperate situations. I'm not saying that all women who have abortions are crazy. I'm just saying there's a lot of women out there who are crazy who also happen to have abortions. But most abortions are done by intelligent women who may be facing very horrible consequences if they have a baby. And I'll be honest with you, up to the point of viability, I don't have a problem with abortion. After the point of viability, I have a huge problem with abortions. And I have a huge problem with late-term abortions. I mean, you're killing a child if you're having a late-term abortion. It's still a baby, but it's a child. You're killing a child. And you're murdering that child that could be surviving on its own. If the mother was to be killed and the doctor took the baby out after the point of viability, they can keep that child alive. And we should preserve that life. I would fully recommend it. Of course, these people who want to have abortions, full-term abortions, I mean, why not wait till the kid's 13 and you want to kill him? You know what I mean? That's, I'm sorry. I was thinking out loud as a parent. No, just saying, that was a horrible joke. I'm just saying that we shouldn't be killing kids. There's no difference between killing a 13-year-old and killing a baby after the point of viability. If you kill a baby after the point of viability, you really have committed murder. But there has to be a cutoff point. And I also support the right of women to have safe access to these what did we call the day after pills? That's what they're called, day after pills. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think that eventually we are going to have birth control, that men will be able to take a pill and they will not be getting women pregnant. And there'll be a certain point where they'll be able to give you a shot, and for 3 months, they might be able to make men sterile for 3 months, and they won't have a baby. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know where this type of thing is happening, but I'll tell you right now, I think the Supreme Court got it right. I think we need these after abortion pills, and I think they should be easily accessible. And I know I'm going against the grain of a lot of people out there. If my mother's watching, she's probably upset with me because I don't think she's for this thing. And I know my grandmother, she's a good Catholic, and any abortion at any time, even during rape and incest, she would have been opposed to that. But I think Republicans are losing because they're not looking at the reality of the situation. And if we don't compromise a little bit, we're going to lose this issue on a federal level. I don't think there should be any amendment to the Constitution that contains the word abortion in any format. And if you keep taking away all the alternatives for desperate women, including the crazy ones who shouldn't have children, and you want to see a crazy woman who shouldn't have children,
I love killing babies. I love
Jesus will come. We have to give her the word.
I've had like 25 abortions, and I'm going to keep having them.
I mean, is that bitch crazy or what? That bitch is crazy. I don't care what you say, but I'll play that again. It was
I love killing babies. I love
Jesus will come. We have to give her the word.
I've had like 25 abortions, and I'm going to keep having them.
I don't know if that was just satire. She was just trying to be funny. I don't know if she was being real. I just saw that clip on Twitter, on X, and there are women out there who have bragged about all the abortions they've had. And I think that's really sick. I think there's something sick with people who think that's a proper thing, and at a certain extreme, okay, let's take it to that extreme. Maybe they should be sterilized. If you are out there getting pregnant and continue to get pregnant and continue to have abortions, killing babies, especially after the point of viability, there's something really screwed up with you, man. And I don't know. I just watched this video.
I love killing babies. I love
Jesus will come. We have to give her the word.
I've had like 25 abortions, and I'm going to keep having them.
So that's what can I say? That's just screwed up. She's seriously mental. One of the things, someone who's in journalism, I don't know if you can call this journalism. I'm just a guy who does a podcast, but I was on radio for 5 years, actually 7 years, 2 years as a co-host, 5 years as a host. And so, I guess they considered me a journalist. I do news investigation. I go out and I try to find the facts and deliver those facts in the best story possible that is comprehensible to the listeners who tune into my podcast. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get to see this stuff. But one of the things that recently caught my attention was that the judge sets a hearing over alleged leak of Nashville school shooter info to conservative outlet. And what had happened is that there was a reporter out there. I think the reporter was reporting for, it was a Tennessee newspaper. Was it the Tennessee Star or the Tennessee Dispatch? I forget the name of the paper, but there was a reporter for a Tennessee paper. And of course, he was trying to get the manifesto and all the other writings from the Covenant school shooting. This was one of those pretend genders. She was born a chick, but wanted to be a dude. And that chick who wanted to be a dude, she shot up a school and killed 6 people. I'll read some from the article here, but a Tennessee judge has ordered a conservative news organization to appear in court over publishing details from alleged leaked documents about a 2023 Nashville school shooting, while the outlet sues for the same kind of records to be released to the public. So there's like dual suits going on. You've got the newspaper or this conservative news organization trying to get the manifesto and all the stuff for this trial. And then you've got the judge who is also got them in court trying to shut them up. And I'll tell you right now, I'm on the side that the people need to know. The people need to know what's in this manifesto. And of course, you know why they don't want you to know, because this transgender person was batshit crazy. And of course, they don't want you to realize that most transgender people are just batshit crazy. I don't know what to tell you. You're a man, you're born with a penis, and you want to cut it off and become a woman? That's mental. If you're a woman and you're born as a woman and later on you want to grow up and cut off your titties and call yourself a man, that's just as crazy. There's something a little insane about that. I don't know. People say, Rob, you just don't understand. These were people born in the wrong body. And no, I'm not buying it. There's just something mental about that. And these people, they need to be fixed, because this is a transgender person. This has happened several times in this country, where people who have sexual confusions, sexual sexual problems, who are transvestites, who are angry at society, they have lashed out at society. And several of the school shootings that have happened over the last 20 years was from people who were transgender, or in the process of starting the transgender process. And so I don't know. I think that this manifesto from this pretend gender who shut up this school, this Covenant Presbyterian Church, I think that manifesto belongs in the public domain, so we can see what this batshit crazy person was planning on doing. And, the only thing I can tell you, the most important reason is because we need to know. We need to know what the truth is, number one. But number two, it might give us some insight why these people do the things they do. I mean, I don't know if that's true, because if you're a dude who wants to cut off your dick, I have no insight at all why you would want to do that. That's just crazy to me. And so, once again, going into a school where there are children and innocent people and shooting them up, I have no reason why someone would do that. You're angry? I don't care if you're angry. I've never had thoughts like this, so I don't understand someone who does have thoughts. But once again, I've never thought about cutting my penis off, and there are people out there who think about that, and society wants you to think that those people are normal. They're not normal. They're flipping insane. There's something wrong with people who want to mutilate their body, and worse yet, there's something even more insane with people who want to allow doctors to mutilate children. We're talking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. 9-year-olds getting sexual transition operations from doctors who are literally mutilating children, when the latest studies, several studies, most of the studies have said that these gender confused, these gender dysphoria that these children are suffering from will go away once they get into puberty, once they get into adolescence. All of that goes away. Maybe not all of it, but a good portion of it, enough of them to realize that, hey, I don't want to cut off any body parts. It's like the comedian who said he's glad that his parents didn't take him seriously when he said he wanted to be a pirate, or otherwise they would have popped out his eye and cut off his leg and put a wooden stump on it. It's the same thing. And there are people out there who have body dysphoria where they want to chop off their leg. They want to become amputees. Well, that's just screwed up, man. I don't know what the hell's going on, but that's just screwed up. Well, I don't know. That was just the end of my my rant on the Covington shooting. And I got to get going. I'll be here Friday. I got to get going to that meeting, but I will be here Friday. And we will be taking... once again, your comments. We'll be looking at that. I've got some comments here. Let's see. Alex Bowser, says, I am afraid the Dems own THW. I don't know what you meant by that. One day, paper ballots, picture ID, simple. It would be simple. It would be simple if that's all they were doing. And so, what can I tell you? Let's see. I've got some meetings coming up. Yep, I got to tell you about some meetings that are coming up. The county is having a meeting tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. at the BOC meeting, the Owens Building meeting, and that's in Coquille, Oregon, 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. Several things on the ballot you might want to be concerned with. The Coos Bay City Council meeting is having a meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. Tuesday. Don't forget tonight, Commissioner Rod Taylor is having a meeting tonight at 6:30 at the Marshfield High School. And I would recommend that you all go check that out. Don't forget that I have sponsors, people who, well, they like what we're doing. 3H Tree Service. I'm sorry we didn't play Where's 3H Tree Service. They were out of the area, way out in the middle of nowhere. We thought it'd be silly to have a game of Where's 3H Tree Service, but hopefully we'll be doing that next week. But you can give them a call at 541-294-1800. Once again, that's 541-294-1800. 3H Tree Service. They can take care of all of those wild trees that are in your yard. And of course, Tom and Gigs. I don't know. Tim was out of the office today. Someone wrote me back. I had asked for him to come on, and I guess he was out of the office, but that's okay. If you need any of those automotive services taken care of, you can go to Tom and Gigs. They're in the Empire neighborhood, 135 South Shoneman Street. This is in Coos Bay, Oregon. And they can take care of those automotive needs. They've got RC cars. They got tonneau covers. They've got side rails. They've got beautiful side rails for your truck. Really kick-ass stuff. Great lighting bars, lighting systems. All of that can be had at Tom and Gigs. And of course, Herbal Choices. If you need some herbals, then they're the choice to make. Herbal Choices. They've got 5 stores, one in South Bandon, one in Coos Bay, one in North Bend, one in Reedsport, and one in Charleston. I highly recommend, if you have those herbal needs, that you go to Herbal Choices. Herbal Choices Cannabis. And it's better than going LaMota. If you go to LaMota, they're just going to give that money to Democrats. So you don't want to do that. Oregon Firearms Federation. If you want to join a good group of gun defenders, your Second Amendment defenders, Oregon Firearms Federation, go to OregonFirearms.org. and check out their latest alerts. I mean, with all the victories we've had in the Supreme Court, I think Kevin has probably had an attitude lift. I mean, I think he's feeling a little better, a little more secure in his surroundings these days. But yeah, check out Oregon Firearms Federation, OregonFirearms.org. And that's pretty much all I have. I'll see you this Friday. We're going to be having a rant. You know how that goes. I always have a rant on Friday. We'll have a panel of people showing up because that's just what I do. So it should be. Just kind of spontaneously put together that panel, and I thought it worked really well. And so hopefully we'll do that again. We'll get some different people on. And if you're out there and you've got a pretty wild opinion, send me an email. You can contact me through my website, robtaylorreport.com. Go to robtaylorreport.com and there's a contact page. Or you can contact me at rob@robtaylorreport.com. That's my email, rob@robtaylorreport.com, and you can contact me there. And if you're a ranter, I would love to talk to you. And if we can get you on the panel sometime because you have a different type of view or you just like to rant, I don't know, maybe we'll get you on the show. But until then, until Friday, well, you know what I always say, carry on, America. Carry on.